What if you knew exactly what the wealthiest, most powerful corporation on earth was investing in? What if you could actually see their portfolio? Well, that corporation is the United States of America. That's right, our government. Now, we all know the US has the deepest pockets on the planet, and recently they've stopped just spending money and they've started acquiring assets in the form of corporations. Uncle Sam has become a part owner of the businesses that where we work and where, where we invest. Okay. So now the US actually owns 9.9% of Intel. They hold an equity stake in Lithium Americas, and they've even got a golden share of US Steel. What does this mean for your 401k? We're going to tell you.
U.S. government is on a buying spree. From computer chips to rare earth metals to lithium mines, the Trump administration has taken ownership stakes in major corporations in recent weeks, and more may come. One of those is Lithium Americas, a Canadian mining company working to develop the Thacker Pass mine in Nevada. The deal comes despite other lithium mining projects getting underway, and despite the Trump administration's public aversion to electric vehicles.
Now, the gentleman mentioned electric vehicles, but the truth of the matter is lithium plays a role in a lot more than that. If you've got an electronic device with a battery, you're dealing in lithium. One other thing he mentioned that is of concern, there are other players in that industry, in that business. Is the US getting involved in actively picking winners and losers? Is that fair?
All green is all bankrupt.
Here's 4 things to know about that deal. 1. So what did the US government buy? To start, lithium is a metal that can be mined out of hard rock. It can also be found in groundwater that's pumped into evaporation ponds, leaving lithium behind. It's used in many things, but you may know it from lithium-ion batteries that power phones, computers, electric vehicles, and more. And now, the US is part owner of what will eventually be a lithium mine. Ian Lang is the Coulter Chair of Mineral Economics at the Colorado School of Mines.
So this deal is a 5% stake in the company Lithium Americas, and then another 5% stake in the project itself, which is the Thacker Pass mine and refining facility.
More specifically, the agreement restructures a $2.26 billion Department of Energy loan that the Biden administration gave to the Canadian company to support its U.S. project. 2. This deal and others are a new approach to spur business.
This is a relatively new tool, we'll say, in the toolbox, and Department of Energy clearly wanted to kind of deploy it.
Is this anti-capitalism that we're seeing play out here?
The approach in the past from the federal government to jumpstart new industries has typically been through funding research or offering loans and subsidies to companies. The US government's investment push into private companies is different than what it's done in the past with, say, Amtrak, chartered by the federal government who was a controlling shareholder, and different than Fannie Mae, set up by the federal government but run as a publicly traded company. This is the government taking a stake in an independent, publicly traded company where it will share influence. The new idea being that an ownership stake will help ensure the project gets going and eventually provide more value to US taxpayers.
Is that contrary to market forces? Shouldn't companies be allowed to succeed or fail on their own merits? I was not a proponent for all of the mandates, the EV mandates that said, oh, you got to buy an electric car, you can't buy an ICE car after 2030. That's not how markets flourish.
To get good taxpayer value, we don't want to just lend them some money at 4% or 0% and get that money back, right? We want an equity stake.
3. This deal comes as the US lags in lithium production. Despite having some of the largest lithium reserves in the world, the US produces less than 1% of the world's lithium, greatly outpaced by Australia, Chile, and China. The US has only one active lithium mine, also in Nevada, and expanding a new industry in the US is tough for a variety of reasons.
A country like Chile, where a large percent of its GDP comes from mining, it's just, it's sort of like it's what it's been doing and knows that very well.
Or take China, a major player in producing lithium, batteries, and electric vehicles.
Almost every mineral market in the world is heavily dominated by the Chinese producers, maybe acting in unison or acting together with downstream producers. And so it is difficult for Western firms to sort of break into that.
Wait a minute. Shouldn't the US, if we have some of the largest lithium reserves, wouldn't it be a better idea to reduce red tape in order to encourage more mining from private companies? Wouldn't we get more out of that as opposed to going in and supporting with taxpayer dollars one particular company?
The Thacker Pass project is a joint venture with Lithium Americas and General Motors, and U.S. government investment in one lithium project could help support the supply chain.
There can be these knock-on effects from behavior like this if everyone else sort of in the market believes that these sectors are more valuable.
4, there are some concerns around this and other Trump administration acquisitions. For starters, there are other ongoing lithium projects in America with private money.
The lithium brines out of Arkansas that Chevron and Occidental and Exxon are investing in are probably, a big competition point for Thacker Pass.
So in theory, the U.S. government is now competing against U.S. companies.
One could argue they're either like picking winners or they have very specific goals they want to meet. And so they're going after either specific companies, specific deposits.
All right, this is a slippery slope. And, we've got to call it out, because I will guarantee you that if Joe Biden, if his administration had done this, they would have been accused of seizing the means of production. The definition of socialism. So the U.S. government, they're not just taxing you anymore. They're actually moving to become your fellow shareholder. Okay. So let's look at why this whole phenomenon of America Inc. What is this buying spree all about? And whether this move is going to send not just your 401k, but possibly even your grocery bill even higher. Now, should you be doing exactly what the U.S. government is doing in terms of buying, just following the leader and buying these stocks? Not necessarily.
It's taken a year and a half, but Japan's Nippon Steel has bought US Steel in a $14.9 billion deal that'll be keenly watched by both US politicians and unions. The Japanese steelmaker had to overcome entrenched opposition after reaching an initial agreement in December 2023. United Steelworkers was against, and the Biden-era White House blocked the deal in early January this year over concerns one of the nation's largest steelmakers would end up under foreign control. However, Nippon Steel saw an opportunity in Donald Trump's coming to power and worked to sweeten the deal for the notoriously mistrustful US president, providing the government a golden share, something Trump crowed about last week.
And we have a golden stock, we have a golden share, which I control or president controls. Now, I'm a little concerned whoever the president might be, but that gives you total control.
It hands US authorities veto power over a huge number of corporate decisions, such as shuttering plants, cutting capacity or offshoring jobs, as well as any future US acquisitions, and even naming an independent director to the board.
All right, does this make sense? Steel, it is vital to national defense. It is vital to our economy. Does it make sense that we've gone ahead and got this golden ticket from Nippon Steel to own a portion of that combined company? You tell me. Now, look, for decades, our government has given away grants, basically free money, to companies that often failed or sent the technology overseas. It was all a risk and no reward where the taxpayer was concerned. Now the strategy has shifted to industrial sovereignty, steel, chips, lithium. Think of it like a venture capitalist. By taking an equity stake, the government gets a seat at the table. If they own 10% of a chip maker or a lithium mine, they can ensure those chips stay here for our defense systems and our power grid and our electronics manufacturing capacity. It's an indication that the government is no longer just a referee. They aren't a player. They are rather a player and not a referee. They're out there on the field with us. And with billions still in the pipeline for 2026, they could go out and we may just be at the beginning of this buying spree. But this could be good for your 401k. That remains to be seen, all right, to the extent that it is invested in these companies also. But in addition to increasing that 401k value, it could increase cost at your neighborhood grocery store. All right. Inflation. Will this plan trigger more inflation? Well, in the short term, there's going to be no way around that. This move is inflationary. When the government prints or borrows billions to buy up stocks, it's injecting more money into the market. Okay. When the federal government spends, it's inflationary. More money chasing a limited number of stocks or anything, it typically means those prices are going to go up. However, the government's bet that this is anti inflationary in the long run may also come to fruition because they believe that if we own our own supply chains, we won't get hit by massive price spikes every time there's a conflict overseas. So the US's new policy is basically to trade a higher deficit today, which is risky as hell, for a more stable price tag tomorrow. Now, as I said, this is risky. If these companies don't become profitable, you and me, guess what? We're holding the bag. We're the ones on the hook. And then I just want to address a bit more about the specter of socialism here. We really need to talk about this. So, what does Kevin O'Leary think about whether or not this move smacks of, again, government seizing the means of production, or in this case, acquiring the means of production?
One more question for you before you go. It is a curveball, but because I haven't seen you in a long time, and we always have some pretty raucous debates about capitalism, I am so curious, if you'd indulge me, what your opinion is of the government, U.S. government, taking a stake in Intel on Friday. Do you have a take on this, sir? I bet you do.
Yes. I abhor this idea. I really do. What has made America so great for 200 years is the government stays in its lane and the private sector does what it does so successfully and attracts 52 cents of every dollar from around the world into its capital markets. We let dead old companies die in our version of capital markets. Intel should have been sold for car parts 3 years ago. I do not want to invest in it as an investor, and I have no interest in taking my tax dollars and giving it to a company that has performed so miserably. Why would anybody want to own this thing? Take it behind the barn and shoot it.
Geesh. Okay. But the thing is, because we are compelled to pay taxes, we don't have a say in whether we invest in it or not. But apparently, Kevin O'Leary's not a fan of the whole arrangement. So, should you follow the leader, the U.S. government, and buy these stocks for your 401k, your IRA, your retirement account, or just your general stock portfolio? All right, the upside is huge, right? When the government owns 10% of a company, they've basically signaled that that company is too essential, too big to fail. Now, that creates a massive safety net for your investment. If the government is all in, the odds of that company going to zero are very low in that situation. So that's the ultimate buy signal. But, okay, here's a warning. So you're now partners with the politicians. Okay. Do we trust politicians? Yeah, we trust them to be untrustworthy. If the political winds start to shift in 2028, let's say we get a president, Kamala Harris, she comes back and she gets it. Third time is the charm. All right, the government could conceivably dump its entire stake in Intel, in U.S. Steel, and in the rare earth lithium mines. Okay. Now, the likelihood of them doing that is very slim because big investors generally are prohibited from doing that because it wouldn't just crash those stocks. Depending on what time frame you did that in, it would crash the entire market. Okay. If the U.S. government is selling, then that's basically the death knell for your company. All right. So you are trading market risk for political risk in either way, because they could decide to sell a portion of it, which again would also be detrimental to that stock. If you follow the leader, the US government, you need to do it with the understanding that your partner, Washington, D.C., doesn't always make decisions based on profit. They make them based on the next election. Okay? Look, America has always been a business. Pay me. This is a permanent shift in how our country operates. We're not going to go back from this. Once the government starts doing stuff, it sets a precedent and they eventually do more of it. So at this point, we aren't just citizens, right? We're shareholders in the national corporation. I want to know what you think about this. There's a lot here. Does America Inc. make you feel more secure? Does it make you feel like going out and purchasing shares in these companies? Or does it make you feel like the government has way too much control over our economy? Is our economy even real if the government is motivated to do things like this? All right. Now, I also want you to remember we're starting a new segment, The Bottom Line. It's going to be a live show where you can actually call in. Well, I'll give you the link and you can appear with me on screen to ask your questions. If you've got a question about your financial situation, your 401k debt, or how to navigate this evolving economy, I want to hear from you. Okay. This is just real talk, no judgment, just looking forward and saying, how can we develop the absolute best solution? So the bottom line, I believe I'm going to have that on Saturdays. I want you to look out for that. And you can either appear on screen. You can also send me your questions if you don't want to appear on screen. And you can send that to Tyrone Keys, Keys, at yahoo.com. I'll talk to you soon.